At the end of the day, I feel like we have a good group of guys on the staff, whether it's the position coaches, the GAs, the QCs, that just want to play elite defense by any means. There's putting the team before your ego, and that's easier said than done, but we have a group of great guys.
Welcome to the Put On Waivers Media Group, home of the Put On Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Student Body Right USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and I am podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR is my Twitter handle. And also, before we start the video with my wonderful guest, Evan Desai, make sure you like, comment, leave a review, all those things like that. We love all engagement. So whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we love it. We're not softies here, man. Give it to us if you want to give it to us. You know what I'm saying? My boy Evan got a new cut, looking fresh as usual. And we're talking about USC. Fight on as always. Let's just go right into it. As far as the defensive staff, is the first time the media got a chance to talk to the staff. What are your thoughts about what you heard from Danton Lynn? Well, let's start with head coach Lincoln Riley first. I think the first thing that he said that it had nothing to do with the defense that everybody was talking about was the fact that it's going to be an open competition for that quarterback position between Novaya and Miller Moss.
Yeah, that was a little surprising. To be fair, he kind of probably should say that, but he kind of sounded genuine in that he really needs to be a competition, which, to be fair, I kind of get it. I mean, I think both are really talented guys. I think both kind of proven themselves they can play well at the college level. Jaden Malava obviously had a really good season last year at UNLV. Yeah. Miller Moss has obviously done good things. Really, every time he's been on the field, it feels like for USC and his opportunities, and obviously that starting the bowl game. But Malava didn't look bad in the bowl game either. I think that he looked good against top competition. It's a weird comp, but it reminds me of I remember last year at about this time we were talking about Jamil Muhammad, and I told you that when Jamil Muhammad, when I look at his numbers, they don't dip when he was playing against better teams. He kind of rises to the occasion, and then Jamil Muhammad ended up having a good year for USC. Jaden Mayav, when I look at his numbers, I don't see him as a group of five guy who just plays well against bad competition. When he played against better teams, and I watched that bowl game, he played up to the level of competition. He didn't, he was ready for the moment. So I think that he's a guy that's a good quarterback. And, that was a big deal that USC was able to get him to flip for, the second time or whatever it was. I'm interested to see how that goes. And, hopefully we'll get to see a good look at both those guys in the spring game.
Yeah, it should be fun time to see what happens as far as that goes. But, pressure breaks pipes. You need to have a competition. I think somebody was giving me I was listening on YouTube about another group of podcasters were talking about USC and saying that almost that Lincoln Riley has to say that it's an open competition, because if he does it, then if you're a transfer, why are you going to go there? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why are you going to go there too? And the thing about it, and another thing I think is interesting too, is that if any one of these other Big Ten teams, if Michigan had, Jaden Mayava, or if let's see who else is there. Penn State had it. Then off the rip, they'd be like, "Oh, they finally got a quarterback," and USC just happens to have two of them. So I would say, I think I would say Miller Moss is the starter, but then at some point I think during games he has such a great skill set that you're gonna take advantage of it. You're gonna find a way to get him involved. So because he's a good runner and he's very fluid, and also you can do a lot of different things with his deep arm, his arm game, because he can throw the ball down the field like crazy.
No, yeah, I feel like he is a really good athlete. I know there's been some concern about can a non-mobile quarterback succeed in this offense. I think Moss kind of proved that in that bowl game, in that Holiday Bowl. But obviously Jaden Mayav, like you said, he's got a really electric skill set. He can really do a lot to show that, as young of a player as he was last year at UNLV, it wasn't just like a situation where he was a highly touted recruit. Like, he actually put it on the field. He did it with, not the best kind of supporting cast around him. So I think that goes to show how good of an athlete he is, how he can run an offense.
Yeah. Let's start We have all these guys. We have all these guys to talk about real quick. I do want to talk about like coach. When we start with coach, the secondary coach, Doug Belk. I guess a lot of the media were talking about how they could. He's very soft spoken. You couldn't really hear him, and in the during the presser. But I mean, comes with a good pedigree. They can't be any worse than they were last time. So that's really, I mean, it's only one way than up. But I think they looked at the film last time, and they're seeing that there were just mistakes made, and the fact that the secondary could not play fast last year, they were still pointing to where people had to go while the ball's being snapped.
No, yeah, I mean, I remember when we played Washington, the criticism was, oh, the defense is running back when the ball snapped. And that was mostly, a criticism of the front seven, but the DBs looked lost on every play. Obviously, we talked about that during the season. The DBs never knew what they were doing and where they were supposed to be. Kalen was just basically trying to like cover for everybody. And that's not really how that works. And, they didn't really know how to play the ball either. So a guy like Doug Belknap, he's got the Saban cosign. You like to see that. He's a guy that, other schools, especially like a couple of years ago when what was that, 2022 or one, when Houston just went nuts on defense. That's the year where a lot of guys would have wanted him to come in and be on their coaching staff. For USC to be able to pluck him like that, I think that's, that he had a bad year last year. Houston's defense struggled in general last year. So he's not necessarily coming off a situation where he's at his highest stock. But again, I like that Saban cosign. Comes from a good tree like that. I'm excited to see what he does. Like you said, it can't be any worse than last year. And the good thing about it is that he does have some talent coming in. Because guys like, Prophet Brown, Anthony Beavers, Jacoby Covington, those are talented guys, came in with a lot of talent from high school ranks, and also being able to add Kamari Ramsey, who's kind of already a proven, really productive player, Akili Arnold, John Humphrey. Those are some guys that I think have a chance to see in his, really just in this defense in general. But with Doug Belk, he'll have a chance to prove himself. So I think he's coming into a good situation for him.
And think about it for a second, folks. The rumor, the battle was between USC and Georgia. Because he knows Kirby Smart very well, so USC did a really good job of getting him to be their DB coach and everything like that. So Matt Entz is an interesting guy because he was literally kind of letting it be known some stuff, right? I mean, they weren't disciplined last year. They weren't very good last year, and he kind of talked about that as well. Also talked about Eric Gentry needed to be at a certain weight, so they're gonna try to get him to a certain weight. What are your thoughts about that? Because you have a guy who is a guy who won national championships at a lower level, and on his resume it said no FBS experience whenever he tried to move up. So now he'll have that at USC.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the move you got to make for USC. You're trying to really load that kind of coaching staff, not necessarily just the coordinators, but the staff as a whole. You got to look at guys with those types of resumes. And, I think you're talking about the things he said at the press conference. He talked like he was a head coach, so it's good to have that as just a position coach. And, I do think he'll have, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, I think, already played really well last year. I'm excited to see what he does this year for USC. And then Mason Cobb, I think, was a good player. He just wasn't really on the field a ton last year. I think he played well at OK State. Eric Gentry, as you mentioned, I think that he was a good player too, just wasn't really on the field a lot for whatever reason. So I think he's going to have the players to do this. And, like he said, he was talking about Eric Gentry hitting a certain weight. I mean, again, talking like a head coach, already trying to, get his players in this shape that he wants them to be playing at. That's more discipline right there than we had just in general last year. So, yeah, I definitely like what Matt Entz brings to the table. Like you said, really loaded resume when it comes to FCS stuff and knows how to run a program. The program he came from was no joke. I know they're FCS, but obviously able to compete and at that level, consistently, he knows what he's doing.
They put players in the NFL too from that level. So let's not try to clown North Dakota State at all. And I think for him, he wants to they want to build something. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a bunch of head coaches on your roster who want to be assistant coaches on your roster who want to be head coaches. Like that's what you want. I mean, that's what you want. You don't want anything more. You want anything more or less than that. So as far as that goes, I think the guy who kind of stole the show, even more so than the defensive coordinator, was Coach Henny, Eric Henderson. Just so much information about his life. He has worked with so many great players, and I think forget about the work with Aaron Donald, but Kobe Turner, Brian Young, rookie years, they come into the Rams organization, and what happens? They win. I mean, they win, number one, and number two, they end up with 20 sacks between the two of them in their rookie season. Like, he knows how to develop talent, and I think some people who follow USC kind of poo-pooed it, say, "Oh, he's not going to really be on the recruiting trail and stuff like that, whatever." And every time you go to USC's website, he's like this, fight on, and he's somewhere across the country in the SEC country and Big Ten country trying to get some of these big defensive linemen to come over.
No, yeah, and I think that they actually, I remember during the press conference they asked him about, like, people say, like, oh, well, you're not going to be able to recruit, it's a different game. And he just said straight up, like, the person I am can recruit. And I think that when he opened up and talked about all the hardships that he dealt with growing up, it really showed that he's been through a lot of adversity. He could be a personable guy. He can relate to a lot of different people, So I definitely think he had the potential to recruit. And, like what you said about, it's not really just Aaron Donald. We can talk about Aaron Donald all day, but it's not really just about him. It's about the complementary pieces. And I remember the first year they promoted him to a defensive line coach and run game coordinator. The Rams traded for Von Miller, the future Hall of Famer, and they actually had him play a bunch of snaps on the defensive line. He was obviously known for being an outside linebacker. He played both, and he balled out of control that year. They won the Super Bowl, So I think he has the right kind of mindset for what he can do with a defensive line, what he can do as a co-DC, run game coordinator, that kind of guy. He's always been that type of dude. And every run defense they have is competitive. It may not be that one that won the Super Bowl. Every run defense they've had in these last 3 years, the Rams with him, has been competitive.
I mean, to stop any offense, you have to stop the run first. And I think that's going to be even more important when they go to the Big Ten. I thought it was interesting what he said about the 5-hour interview we had with Sean McVay. And talk about knowledge of football. He did say that, like, he said Sean McVay is so smart he could actually coach either offense or defense. Like that. He said that 5-hour interview was very intense, and it really kind of helped him become what he is today, as far as being a really good defensive coordinator. His mantra is dog work. We know that very much, and he is. I mean, I think I think kind of reminds me of that energy that Ed Orgeron had. Like, you know what I mean? A little bit like, I mean, I'm not two totally different people, as far as that goes, but he just had that energy to get people to go play for him. And I think this defensive line is going to be drastically improved when they get to work with Eric Henderson.
No, yeah, for sure. I think that, you want a personable guy like Ed Orgeron on the recruiting trail, a guy who can relate to kids kind of gravitate towards. I definitely think that Henny can be like that because, like he said, like, he had to raise his siblings, like when he was older and everything. He has experience, dealing with kids that age, kind of developing kids that age, when it comes to character. And then obviously his football resume kind of speaks for itself. And yeah, I think just being able to be with I remember we talked about Sean McVay, like you said, and being able to have that experience as a winner is a big deal. Being able to play for and play with big defensive names, the NFL, both from as far as coaching goes and as far as playing goes, that's a big deal. It's when you hear people from the NFL, when Eric Henderson was hired, you heard people from the NFL talking really glowingly about him. So it goes to show how much respect he has around the game. I think that was probably really attractive towards Lincoln Riley, just towards everybody in general, because it needed to be something different. And what Lincoln Riley liked in terms of, like, Alex Grinch, Brian Odom, those guys just wasn't really working out. I think it was time for him to kind of branch off a little bit, maybe step outside of his comfort zone and find some guys that, maybe he wasn't familiar with originally, but that he knows are respected around the game for a reason.
It's going to be a little frustrating for Trojan fans. And we feel your frustration, because you're going to see how many invites this team had to the combine. And you're going to probably see some of these guys get drafted, and you're going to say, oh my God, this team was really kind of loaded, but we just had the wrong person guiding the defense. It does stink. I mean, but I do think we probably should have traded. We probably should have looked into more so the game against Tulane, and said that could probably be foreshadowing to the season, because it was basically. I think the game against Louisville, who was a really good defensive team, could be foreshadowing for the season coming up as well. So look out for those things as well. But it would be nice to have Caleb Williams in the college football playoff, because anything could happen when you have 13 on the field. We're going to play with communication at all times and shocking effort. The words of Danton Lynn. Danton Lynn, I mean, listen, just give me the communication right now, cousin, because it was so bad last year. I can't even deal with it. But I have another episode coming up this week where I kind of I go through the coach's film of what UCLA football was about last year. Right now, he's very soft spoken, very almost like Tony Dungy like, just very calm and relaxed and whatever. I do think he's more of a kind of that quiet tactician, if you will. Thoughts about Danton Lynn as he embarks his second year as a defensive coordinator.
Well, I think that, obviously like the knock on him, of course, that lack of experience as a defensive coordinator. But the thing that's kind of interesting is a lot of the guys who do have a lot of experience as a DC that USC was looking at hadn't really done a ton as recently, hadn't really done well recently in the sense of, like, for instance, like Jeff Collins was a guy that was floated around. Jeff Collins' defenses at Ja Tech were horrible. Ed Orgeron was a guy that I liked, that a lot of people liked, but at the same time, he hasn't coached in a while. So it's like, what has he done for you lately? Well, Dan Lynn's done a lot for me lately in the sense he had a number 14 defense, scoring defense last year at UCLA. So he's coming in with a lot of momentum. And I think that with him, like when you look at that roster that UCLA had last year, they were a lot of versatile guys, the Murphy twins, Latu, like those were versatile guys that could play linebacker, could stand up, they could, get in their stance. They could do a lot of different things when it came to the front. And I think he's going to have the chance to do that this year as well. I think that if he wants to go with, like a 4-2-5, or if he wants to occasionally drop a linebacker down like he did last year, he kind of gave teams a lot of different looks. He said when he first was hired that he wants to scheme the defense to the players he has. He doesn't want to just have a set scheme and insert players. He wants to insert a scheme into the players that he's got. So I think that he's going to have a chance to do that here because I think he showed that last year that he could have the same personnel on the field line up in different formations. So I think he's just a really smart guy in general as far as football IQ goes on defense. It probably just goes with the guys that he played for. His dad obviously having a lot of contacts and being around that. Him coaching a while in the league in the NFL. I think that, of course there's, the concern about, and maybe he's a bit too young, a bit too inexperienced is really the better word. But I think that you also want a guy that can show it recently. And he did it in the conference that played a lot of offense last year.
Yeah, he did. And not only did this conference play a lot of offense, but a conference where his team didn't give any offense. Like their offense was horrible last year. And you had a head coach and he also performed with a head coach who had one leg out the door because he just wanted to be a coordinator. Mm-hmm. He wanted to leave college football and he used his relationship because he's very close to Ryan Day to go be the offensive coordinator there. Everything's kind of opened up once Bill O'Brien took the job at BC. So and I think some of the names that we talked about Jim Leonard for ad nauseum, but he nobody trusted him to be. I'm not saying trusted him because I'm sure he did. I'm sure there's select places he didn't want to go. And maybe he wanted to go back to the league because he ended up going back to Denver. Going back to going to the Broncos here to go be their defensive back coach and passing game coordinator there as far as Jim Leonard goes. So he didn't want to come. I'm sure that conversation was there. But even he would have been a 1 year guy, a one year, hey, coordinator for or whatever at Wisconsin for a minute. So I think Tony White was a name because Tony White all of a sudden got a magical raise out of nowhere. During that process where USC was looking for a defensive coordinator, but it makes it makes sense. I think one thing we got to learn in life is to have good connections and good ties with people. And I think we only got Coach Henne because he knows and Danton Lynn like they're almost like brothers. Like they kind of talk to Coach Henderson talked about that relationship, how close they are, all those things like that. So that's something to think about as well. Like making sure you have close ties with folks who are really good at their specific job. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things can happen here. I really do. I'm not like I think we are very clear on this show, and we're not homers on this show at all. Like we tell like it is. I do think just them just tackling alone, if they just tackle. Like literally, like the tackle makes so much a difference because if they actually tackle. When I was at the Holiday Bowl, they actually tackled. And I was like, oh, they tackling today? Okay, okay, they have a chance. And they literally blew out Louisville. I mean, it would have been really awful if for Louisville if Miller Moss didn't throw a pick at the 1 yard line at his own 1 yard line. They were going in to score again. And could have easily put up 50 points in that game. So I think Lincoln Riley was trying for the 7 touchdown game, calling that pass play on first down. But yeah, so all those things like that, I really think that USC should be, if they tackle just, if they just tackle alone, Evan, I think they'll be much better defensively. And I think the communications, they're going to be better. I think also, you can speak on this, Dave Lynn talks about going really, really slow when they learn the offense, to the point where like players at UCLA last year were like, hey, coach, come on, we got this already. He's like, no, I'm making sure that motherfuckers know. I'm going to go slow as hell to make sure y'all know what's going on.
No, yeah, that wasn't the case with Alex Grinch. No one really seemed to know what was happening. You talked about communication. There was absolutely no communication. The only communication that was happening was after the play and Kalen Bullock's yelling at people because they can't do their jobs. That was the only communication I saw. So that was pretty disappointing. Like I said, there was no discipline. Like you said, that was talked about. The players aren't understanding the defense. They very obviously didn't. I know there was that game when the post-game press conference when Bryson Shaw was like, oh, we're letting him down or whatever. It's like, dude, I appreciate it. And to be fair, Bryson Shaw did not play well last year regardless. But the team as a whole, they didn't know what they were doing. You could tell by the way they were playing. They wouldn't even hit gaps. They didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
They, like we said, they would backpedal. And sometimes it literally looked like they were inviting blocks. They weren't trying to shed blocks, weren't trying to get around blocks. This happened throughout the entire season. They were just like inviting themselves, welcoming blocks. So I think that, yeah, I mean, if you improve the tackling, you at least get the Holiday Bowl defense where, yeah, you're going to go up 28 points, but you're playing a pretty good team and let your offense do what they do, take the pressure off of them, they'll get it done like USC did, and they won by multiple scores. If you can tackle and just improve either A, the communication, or B, like you said, just let them know what the defense is. Now is where a huge change is going to come. So I think that's why there's so much opportunity. It's like, can they go the 14th ranked defense in 1 year? I doubt it. But can they still improve drastically? I mean, absolutely. And that's going to in turn potentially take pressure off the offense.
I am absolutely fascinated by this team going to Lincoln Riley going to this conference, because there are people on one side who think that, hey, you know what? Damn, they're gonna score some points on some of these teams. And I mean, do these teams in the Big Ten have a defense that's as good as Louisville's was last year? Like, I mean, they were only missing a couple of guys. You know what I mean? So, and they blew out Notre Dame, all that stuff like that. So, and then you got the folks who like the Iowa folks who think that they're gonna just blow, gonna run the ball down their throat, 80 times and just beat the hell out of these soft West Coast teams. It should be interesting to see what happens there. But I do like I said, the coaching staff, they got to prove it on the field. If they can just get to that, they were in the hundreds last year. If they can just get to the middle, the 40s, 50s, 30s, if you will, it's gonna make a big difference, because it's gonna make a big difference. And some of these teams, I mean, Michigan has, who's the quarterback in Michigan right now? Like, that's, I mean, if the LSU Michigan games are huge, they're early. They go 1-1 in those games, then I think the sky's the limit for this team.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is a tough schedule next year, but like you said, there's so many questions at quarterback for so many of the teams that they'll be playing. And I think that the thing is, so like when you look at last year's team, even in the games where the offense didn't play well, the offense still outperformed the defense. I look at Oregon and the Oregon game, and there was another game I was thinking about. Oregon and Utah. So neither side of the ball played particularly well. But USC still put up over 30 against Utah, a good Utah defense. Problem is they gave up, 30 however many to lose a game to a horrendous Utah offense. So even when the offense wasn't playing their best, they're still outperforming the defense. And in Utah's case, by a landslide. And in Oregon's case, USC was not good on offense particularly, but they still did better than the defense did. And both sides of the ball were playing against, a good Oregon offense and a good Oregon defense. Like, the defense still really let the offense down when you think about it. So it's like, I think that people talked about how it looked like Caleb Williams was pressing a little bit, trying to find those home runs a little bit too much because he felt like he had to be perfect. He felt like he had to score. I know a lot of people in the media have speculated that it appears to be that way because Caleb Williams did keep trying to look for the home run all season. If that doesn't happen, then you're just running the offense, and that offense is going to free guys up, get guys open. You're going to be able to sustain drives more consistently. So
Yeah.
Defense, just like you said, get in that middle of the pack. That's going to help the offense. It's going to help the whole team. It's going to help the culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100%. I think it's coming. I think they're doing it the right way. I think he's trying to stack draft classes on top of each other. I do think a guy to watch out for is Jason Zandamela. He really wants to be the starting center freshman, right? Out the gate. And I'm excited to see that. The kicking game is something that I always focus on. They signed a 6. I didn't realize that they go for 6 stars. When a kickers think go 6 stars kick, but Ryan Sayer is going to be a guy who comes in and he won't occupy. I think he's I don't think he will occupy a scholarship because they only have like 3 or 4 scholarships left. So they're trying to hold that for the second transfer portal. But he's as long in college, long in high school, 53 yards. They need to get better in the kicking game. Even in the game against Louisville, he missed like a 30-yard field goal. Dennis Lynch, you cannot be missing field goals like that. And in the Big Ten, you just can't do it. It's just embarrassing. So if they get that kicking game going, that'd be nice to see. But besides that, man, we got a chance to, USC fans got a chance to meet these defensive coordinator and defensive staff, and we'll see what happens for SC in the future. I do need to get some SC stuff behind me though. I got all my Giant stuff. I got my Raiders stuff behind me. I gotta get some USC stuff back there behind me. So, anything else before we go?
No, you mentioned the special teams. I saw that our special teams analyst or whatever was like nominated for special teams coach of the year. Because it just goes to show that what's that?
Because Zachariah Branch. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. It goes to show that, that part of it is already so damn good that the country is looking past the horrendousness of the rest of the special teams to put our special teams coach is apparently one of the best in the country.
Exactly.
So now you can fix the kicking game.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That means a lot to you. Like you mentioned, there's just been too many missed kicks. I understand missed kicks happen.
We did have
a couple too many questions.
We did have a couple of blocked punts. Because Kyra Hudson had one in the Holiday Bowl, and then Deuce Robinson.
Deuce and Gentry, right?
Yeah, and Deuce, I think they might have even had 3. So I'm not sure how that goes. But it's we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I just want touchbacks, make them go 75 yards. And then we'll see if that pass rush can get up. I think they need one more big body to help out Rakes, and they should be and they'll be they go a long way as far as that goes. So all right, Trojan fans, we'll see you next time. Evan, thanks for joining us here again. And
appreciate you.
As always, fight on, folks.